Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. Welcome back to the Daily Dope Show. And wow, we don't have very good news very often. It's usually the grim side of the story over here at the Daily Dope Show. And I hate to be that negative Nancy guy, whatever you want to call it. While everybody else is out there celebrating and dancing in the streets, I'm always critical of what's going on out there in the legalization of marijuana world. Or maybe I'm just critical of the politicians getting elected. Maybe I'm calling out entire political parties for being complete shills for big pharma, and both parties are doing it always. But sometimes you get some victories. And when them victories happen, you got to celebrate. You have to crack open the beer or the champagne or whatever you got, if you're into that sort of thing, which I don't endorse. The go-to celebration requires alcohol because it gets a lot of people killed, because a lot of people don't even drink alcohol. And then all of a sudden it's celebration time and they're confronted with drinking alcohol because it's celebration time. I'm not a big endorser of that. But I think this is time to celebrate. And I don't care what you got. Throw it up, blow it up, light it up. We remember, let's go back to the tweet. We have a tweet here that I say again, thanks Texas, again, 100%. Here's my meme about it that I made. The marijuana movement thanks Texas for firing this obstructionist. And that obstructionist was Congressman Pete Sessions, who was the House Rules Committee chairman, who, as you know, since 2014 has kneecapped almost every people-guided attempt to reform federal marijuana laws in a way that accommodated things that were already happening. And it was, the federal government's roadblocks were just getting in the way of common sense things like veterans being able to access medical marijuana, even in states where medical marijuana was already legal and they were already accessing it, just not getting it sanctioned through their doctor or getting cut off from their regular medications because of that. And this guy right here was, we're talking about banking bills that would allow legal marijuana businesses in states where it was completely legal for them to do business. However, because of federal laws, mainly the scheduling and banking rules on illegal drugs, we couldn't, we can never do banking. We can't file taxes. If we do file taxes with the federal government, marijuana businesses that are legal in states where it's legal, then we get this 280E thing hitting us where you can't do any kind of reasonable business tax stuff like get deductibles and stuff. We can't do regular taxes. We're looked at as an illegal organized crime or situation, and it's just this guy right here. He's the number one reason why prohibition still existed, even though it was, like the cops aren't going to actually kick your door in and take your shit and raid you and shut you down. They're going to let you keep doing business, but it's not going to be very good business. And then most of your profits are going to go to the government if you do get away with it. Anyway, any kind of sensible laws or amendments or anything like that going through had to go through that guy. And he was up for re-election in Texas. And a Democrat named Allred came by and beat him. So he got gonned. And then the Democrats also, somehow took over the House of Representatives overall in the midterm elections, which gave them the ability to take over that rules committee. So now the rules committee has a new boss, and his name is McGovern, and he says, I'll let the House debate marijuana reform. This is by Dan Adams of the Boston Globe. For years, the U.S. House's powerful Rules Committee has been the place proposed marijuana laws go to die. And I've done several stories about it. And I've even, one of them was like, marijuana's real number one enemy is Pete Sessions, not Jeff Sessions. That was a big thing that I thought was a big deal that people should know about. And at the time, no one cared about it. But he was blocking things left and right for banking and veterans and any, you know, just basically anything that had to do with sensible, the federal government trying to get them out of the hair of people trying to do stuff where it was legalized in their state. No, they would not allow any of it to get done because Pete Sessions himself would basically kill it right in that committee. And we remember, we watched interviews with him, and his excuse was the same old reefer madness. He was talking about friends of his that died from heroin, that started out smoking weed. It's like, are you kidding me? You're going to go to gateway theory? You're going to hinge your whole political career pretty much on this gateway theory. That's what Pete Sessions did. He hinged his whole political career on a bet that somehow in Texas, where he has to go run for re-election very soon, because you only get like, you know, so many years when you're a congressman, and it's not very many. Every couple years you have to rerun for election. And what happened is it's fresh on people's mind what you said about why you would not let sensible regulations go through, like, you know, we wanted to vote on hemp things and deregulation from the federal government of CBD, you know, and reclassifying cannabis as whole plant cannabis as being something different. And no matter what it was or how sensible it was, you just wouldn't let it go up for debate or a vote. People remembered that. That was pretty cringy to most people, especially even in Texas. You know, Texas isn't as like anti-marijuana as you might think it is. And as a matter of fact, I think a lot of people have been coming around, even in the Republican side of the aisle in Texas, like the hardliners, the conservatives, whatever you want to call them, the older people even. Even the older Republicans in Texas are coming around to this issue. Because sooner or later, when you're talking about medical marijuana, it's really hard to find any resistance to it anywhere, among any circles or any demographics, anywhere in America. And this is the last place on the planet Earth where you even have that much resistance to medical marijuana. I don't know how more clear I can be about this. This is not a bipartisan issue anymore. Utah just proved that, and Missouri. Medical marijuana is a settled thing. Even Donald Trump said that in his election. He said that as early as 2015. This is a settled issue. And people like Pete Sessions wouldn't even let things that have to do with medical marijuana come up for a vote. And that's why your political career is basically over. I'm sure it's not, because corruption in the government, he's just going to become a lobbyist or just run for something else and get elected. Being elected isn't, he's probably going to run for Senate or whatever, you know. Maybe not even in Texas. Maybe he'll run for who knows what. So anyway, let's read the rest of the article. Pete Sessions, a Texas Republican, made sure that that's where the committee would be, is where marijuana proposals would go to die. Since becoming chairman of the committee in 2013, and despite strong public support for reforming marijuana laws, he has stopped dozens of cannabis-related amendments and bills from reaching the House floor, including at least 34 since January of 2017, according to one analysis. And that is an analysis done over at Marijuana Moment, and that's one of the ones I read. Among the bills blocked by Sessions were proposals that would have allowed state legal marijuana firms to access banking services, bolstered protection against federal prosecution for medical marijuana patients and workers, and prevented the VA from discriminating against veterans who consume cannabis for medical reasons. Of course, there was things in there talking about more research, more people getting allowed to grow research marijuana, looser rules around what the research really consisted of, allowing the VA to research, just all kinds of things that have to do with like actually like looking at something. Like when the federal government is sitting there and there's all this stuff going on with something like marijuana or medical marijuana, people are doing it. Like 30 states or more have medical marijuana programs that are actively running, and most states have some kind of a leniency towards medical marijuana other than like 4 states. Basically, the federal government's responsibility isn't to ignore that. It's to study it and look into it and see if there's really true efficacy there. And not from a prohibitionist point of view where they're just going to look for ways to demonize it and say negative things about it to scare the public with no research based. That's what they've been doing. Their responsibility is to look at it, see what works, see what's going on, research it, do some analysis, and be responsible about that. So, you know, we're heading in the right direction now, is all I can say. Here's that article back here talking about how the GOP Congress has blocked dozens of amendments just in the span of like an 8-month period from late session in 2017 to mid-session in 2018. And the 115th Congress, by the way, was one of the most obstructionist Congresses there ever was when it comes to marijuana legislation getting blocked. And Pete Sessions was at the forefront of that. In fact, he was pretty much the gunman to shoot down anything that came through. And it got to the point where people was just shooting things through there just to get it shot down so they could be like, hey, I got my shit shot down by, you know, Pete Sessions as well. It becomes a badge that you wear as a politician when somebody's blatantly being that much of an obstructionist. I mean, the only obstructionism that I remember that even comes close is the Mitch McConnell style filibustering and just overall obstruction of Obama that happened during Obama's first like 3 or 4 years. After that, even a little bit more. I mean, and we also remember at the late end of Obama's term when McConnell and company blocked his Supreme Court nomination. So McConnell is the person that comes to mind when it comes to obstructionism in the government. But when I think of it and I compare it to what Pete Sessions has done and is responsible for, McConnell don't even come close in my mind. Whereas some people might disagree with that. But to me, this is more of an important issue than some of the things that McConnell was being an obstructionist about. And with McConnell, it was more of a back and forth with him and Obama. And the one that pissed me off the most was the Obamacare stuff. But other than that, it really was, it was just theater. This is a bunch of theater, which the government usually is anyway. And if you can distance yourself from that aspect of it, you can actually, and if you're not one of those tribalists on the left or the right, you'll actually see what's really going on. And what's really going on is they're distracting you with all that bullshit while they're doing this bullshit right here. Actual obstructionism. Blocking the actual will of the actual people. Because these things that I'm talking about that he's blocking, these aren't like, oh, we want to legalize marijuana so that we can just go around and throw joints out the window at every teenager walking down the sidewalk. That's not what we're talking about. Things that are actual things that people are doing right now, but they're getting busted for, or sensible things like research and shit like that that they should be doing, but they just aren't because they're getting blocked. We have veterans dying every day, you know, like suicide and otherwise. Up to 50 veterans are just gone every day. And in my opinion, that shit could be like 0 because of marijuana. And that's just what I know as a veteran, what I went through, you know. So anyway, back to the article. While he is an outspoken critic of marijuana, Sessions has insisted the measures were shot down under broader Republican policy of killing controversial add-ons that imperiled the passage of critical spending bills which they were attached. That's total bullshit. We've seen them take out just the marijuana amendments at times. I mean, that's just a lie. That statement is just flat out a lie. The one he made originally where people asked him why he was opposed to marijuana, that's the one you got to focus on. And where he goes into this whole diatribe about his buddy that he went to college with and ended up doing drugs and dying because of an overdose or some bullshit. Well, he said that that's why, because marijuana is a gateway drug. So that's the one that we focus on. And that's the one that, once again, he's full of shit. So he had to go, man. Why are we still talking about this fucking guy? He's gone. Goodbye. Thank you for firing him, Texas, again. Whatever his reasons, the pot law logjam created by Sessions is about to break. Not only did Sessions lose his seat on Election Day to Democrat and former NFL player Colin Allred, but following the Democratic takeover of the House, Representative Jim McGovern of Massachusetts will soon assume control of the Rules Committee. Ooh, wow. You know what? And that's funny because Massachusetts has legal marijuana. And I'm sure there's a lot of businesses in Massachusetts that are probably phoning him up on a regular talking about, hey, man, we need these banking regulations done like ASAP. Hey, man, we got veterans that need access to medical marijuana to yesterday. So as soon as these amendments make another round, guess what? They're going to pass. I don't see how they can't. All they have to do is go to the floor and they will pass. I don't know what planet you live on that you don't think any of those sensible, thought out, already working type situation amendments are going to fail. There's no government that does that. The only thing going on in the government is this kabuki theater shit I mentioned earlier. Well, usually it's on some partisan line, party line vote shit that you hear about and everybody focuses on, and there's, you know, the actual talk on the floor goes beyond C-SPAN. That shit never happens these days, but when it does, it's because it's some really, you know, hot push button issue that they use to divide and conquer everybody on a daily basis. Meanwhile, this is a serious issue that people are like living and dying over and going to jail or not over. This shit's people cares about. Then they will actually have real stories about it when it happens, because there's no two ways around it. It's going to be history making shit. All right. So stay tuned, because you know I'll be the first one to have a really good opinion about it, without a bunch of puns and a bunch of that mainstream media talk about munchies and Doritos and that kind of shit. This isn't that kind of shit. You came here because this is where, I don't know, the opinion ain't really just an opinion. This is just like what people should be feeling like. This is how, you know, the experiment isn't that we're legalizing marijuana, guys. The experiment was that fucking they tried to make it so you could, you know, get thrown in jail for it. You know, meanwhile, you can have his money. You can have 1,000 beer bottles right now in your possession, and no one's going to give you any ticket at all. Unless you're drunk and you're doing something that impedes on somebody else's freedom. And that's the way it should be with all substances. There's no reason to have like some kind of extreme caution or overabundance of caution on marijuana. Are you fucking kidding? It's probably like the safest substance known to man that people actually consume. You know, like look at food. Food ain't, you can't name me one food that's safer than marijuana if you do it in abundance. So back to the article, and sorry if I'm still celebrating, but I'll get us through this. So in an exclusive interview with, what do we got here? TWTW? McGovern pledged big changes. Quote, unlike my predecessor, I'm not going to block amendments for marijuana, the Democrat said. Citizens are passing ballot initiative, legislators are passing laws, and we need to respect that. Federal laws and statutes are way behind, and I agree with them. According to McGovern, this isn't just about his support for marijuana reform. It's part of a bigger effort to make the House more democratic. And that's not with a capital D. That's just in theory, all right? He blasted Sessions for rallying or for rarely allowing amendments to be made in order, essentially allowing GOP legislator leaders to decide behind closed doors which measures are considered by the full House. Quote, I don't want to be known as the chairman of the Rules Committee who presided over the most closed Congress in history. That's what we have right now, McGovern said. I want to be more accommodating and basically empower rank and file members. I don't like this idea where it's my way or the highway. We need a more deliberate process. All right, now that to me sounds like one of these compromisey sounding statements. And I'm not saying that he should be somebody that's assertive on partisan line. I'm just saying he should recognize that it's Republicans that have had the main opposition to these amendments and proposals that have went before this committee. And it is the responsibility of a Democrat, since you're the other side, and that's the system we're forced to live under. Just like when you're born, you're forced to have to use dollar bills. Well, for some reason in America, you're forced to have to deal with this two-party system bullshit. And with it comes stuff like this. This wishy-washy, mealy-mouth kind of, well, you know, we recognize that we've been getting kicked in the fucking teeth for decades, but all of a sudden we're in control now, and, well, we're going to let everybody know that compromise is important. Everybody's got a say. It's like, what? No, you're in control, dumbass. If fucking prohibitionists want to have a say, you tell them to sit back down. We're doing something else right now. Anyway, that's just me complaining that Democrats never grabbed this one by the horns because, you know, they claim to be the, you know, if you look up definitions, do the definitions mean anything anymore? Like, look the fucking word liberal up and see what it means. All right? Do that on your own. I'm not going to do it. Just look that shit up. Read it out loud to yourself. And then tell yourself, this should be the person that's going to fucking legalize marijuana, right? I guess not. I fucking guess not. Back to the article. To be fair, Congress did pass a handful of marijuana reforms while Sessions chaired the Rules Committee, including the landmark Rohrabacher-Farr budget rider, which keeps the U.S. Department of Justice from spending money on cases against state law compliant medical marijuana patients and operators. But the thing is those, it wouldn't have been something he had the power to just pluck out on that one. I don't think. And that's the trap the government has. They have all these little traps where somebody has to go along with something, and then later on they say, well, you know, he did do this, so at least he did do that, so he did something good. And it was like, no, I bet you he told, at the time it was kicking and screaming, and he was not happy about having to do it. And I know how it works. Back to the article, McGovern's more open approach should suit marijuana reformers just fine, including even some Republicans who favor loosening the federal prohibition on pot. Currently, federal law classifies cannabis alongside heroin as one of the most dangerous drugs, those with no accepted medical use and high potential for abuse. The designation is widely derided by medical experts and cannabis consumers as inaccurate. In fact, the FDA recently approved a seizure-preventing drug manufactured by a UK pharmaceutical firm that is comprised of cannabidiol, or CBD, one of the primary compounds in cannabis. Nationally, there is an overwhelming public support for legalizing medical marijuana, a policy favored by 94% of Americans, while polls show that roughly two-thirds of Americans support legalizing the drug for recreational purposes. Following the passage of several marijuana initiatives on Election Day, 33 states have now legalized medical cannabis, with 10, plus Washington, D.C., having legalized the drug for recreational consumption. The GOP-controlled Senate and unpredictable Trump White House could, of course, spike any reforms passed by the Democrat-run House. We're going to stop it right there and just say one more time that I don't think the Democrats are going to do anything of serious concern. Now, I did report on, and there is a such thing as the Cannabis Caucus. Are they going to do anything? Are you guys still around? What's the story? Instead of growing, the Cannabis Caucus shrank, and now some of the members of it have been voted out of office. So I don't even know what's going on with that. But what I do know is that if you got this guy now at the Rules Committee, that's McGovern says he's going to let debate happen on the floor, why don't we get a descheduling on the floor? Debate that. That'll get the whole federal government, that'll take care of all that shit I was talking about, and Alexis Bortel's case and everything all in one swoop. Just be like, you know what? Hey, let's debate the federal government position that it's a Schedule 1. Let's do that right now and here. And you can have all the Republicans and right-wingers that hate weed, and, you know, church people and Democrat CIA agents that just got seats that hate weed. You can have them all line up on one side and state their case, and you can have everybody that's for weed on the other side, and you can have them all debate it. That would be great. Let's have that debate. But it won't happen. And anything even close to it will never happen in the halls of Congress, because nothing that they do up there is real. They don't do anything except for reactionary shit, and they're way behind. And obviously, even with this new leadership, nothing's going to get done, because the Senate still has to approve anything, and they can block all of it. So I don't have any faith in any of this mattering, except for the fact that we have the ability to have something go to the floor and be heard. At least there's that. And this is a big deal for things like all the things that we mentioned before, you know, the veterans stuff, the banking, all that. The research, let's get that on, you know, let's talk about it tomorrow. What's the holdup? Let's get right to it. As soon as session starts in whenever, January or whatever, as soon as the new session starts, I want to hear somebody throw something in that's going to do something, you know. I'm not going to hold my breath for let's talk about the schedule, but whatever. Back to the article, McGovern said he would nonetheless work to advance his biggest marijuana-related priority, allowing states to legalize and regulate cannabis without interference from the federal government. That's the descheduling. Why has it got to be like worded out like, oh, we're going to not deschedule, but let's let people that already legalized it. Well, what about like Alabama? They're still experimenting with it even though the state hasn't legalized it. I guarantee you there's people using cannabis for medical marijuana. I know people in Kentucky and Tennessee and Florida's medical marijuana program is such garbage that I know people that are using medical marijuana outside of the program. Like, there's people in multiple states. Texas, I know of. Oklahoma, their program is, you know, they're signing people out. Everything's running smooth, but there's a lot of reasons why we need the federal government to just unleash this. All right? Interstate commerce between states, could help the new states that aren't on board yet come online real fast, because we have a lot of oversupply in places like Michigan, California, Oregon. People in California and other places might be like, what are you talking about, man? We can't even find, medical marijuana at the dispensary. Believe me, if they did this right, everybody could get supplied. There's no problem with that. But they want to slow roll this. They want to keep the prohibition boogeyman over on one side, and then they want to have the black market, which is a name that they give to people that are just, supplying local sales. They make a boogeyman out of that, and they want it to sound like all this, so that all this noise is made and people are still like buying into some of the reefer madness, and all this is building this thing that is what John Boehner loves. It's what the shareholders at Canopy Growth and Aurora and Tilray love. It's the hype that the corporate takeover is going to crush all the home growers out there that have been growing weed for the last 100 years, Like all those people that have been fighting for marijuana to be legalized, the people that grow weed, the people that are really dedicated to smoking weed, not just like somebody that like the cool like weekend bro, hey, what up, man? Whatever you want to call it. The stoner fam. Just the thing is why is it that they think they are gonna give the full green light on weed being legal? It's just some mythological future thing, like Jesus coming, the second coming of Christ or some shit. The green rush for, the investors. It's the biggest scam that they've ever tried to pull. And it's working, believe it. But it's not going to work. It's not going to help many people. Just a few people are going to get really rich off of the ignorance of a lot of others. The only way it works is if the price of weed is where it is now, or a lot more people start smoking weed or something. I don't know. I just don't understand it. But it's an attempt to, I don't know, make this seem like it's going to take forever to happen. No, at all costs. That's what this all is, all right? And that's my final statement on McGovern's statement there. But he also wants marijuana businesses to be able to access banking services. I really wish he would have said something about this tax thing, this 280E situation. But anyway, I mean, it would all be solved with the descheduling. Maybe somebody in there has the wherewithal to put that in front of them and let that go up for debate. I just want to keep stressing that. So finally, McGovern said military veterans should be permitted to receive recommendations for marijuana from physicians at the VA in states with medical marijuana programs. I argue that should just go beyond that, and the federal government should provide medical marijuana for veterans, period. But that's just me. I got a lot of radical ideas. Quote, this just seems like common sense stuff, McGovern said, especially on the issue of medical marijuana. People who are opposed to that are just on the wrong side of public opinion overwhelmingly. But you know what, dude? I'm of the firm belief that public opinion, majorities and whatnot, doesn't mean something's right or wrong. You got to be for something because it's right. You have to have your heart in it there, McGovern. I hope you do. Because if you don't, you're going to let the lobbyists and the corporate takeover type people do what they want to do and talk about amendments that they want to pass. And this might be a great time for people like John Boehner, because now they don't have that Pete Sessions roadblock or that Jeff Sessions boogeyman in the background, but they still got boogeymen, And there's still Department of Justice judges and, section chiefs that are talking about, oh, we're going to crack down on you, Michigan, if you get out of line. We're still going to do our jobs. And it's like, in order for me to be convinced that McGovern isn't just another pass-through for the corporate takeover, I'm going to have to see some serious shit, like just descheduling, or some serious shit in the way of ending prohibition in many ways. But it doesn't seem like any of it matters unless we talk about this descheduling. Am I saying that too much? I'm sorry if that just like is getting annoying to somebody that's listening, but we need to deschedule cannabis immediately. What's the holdup? How is it even on there? It's a plant. I mean, you look at what's on there, and that shit looks like some chemicals for the most part. It looks like a very specific list of things that are real. If you want to be like that about it, well, I have a marijuana plant that's nothing like what your Schedule 1 definition says. Whatever, man. So anyway, back to this quote. It'd be nice if every once in a while Congress acted in a way that people wanted. I know that may seem like a radical idea, but come on. That's funny. I just said that I'm the one with the radical ideas. Well, you know what, McGovern? I'm hoping that you're not going to do the bidding of the corporate takeover in that regard, because we all know that from the government standpoint, corporations are people. I believe Mitt Romney added "my friend" to that. McGovern even said that supporting marijuana reform is a must for any Democrat seeking the country's highest office, given the criminal justice and healthcare implications of federal prohibition. Quote, if you're running for president in 2020, you should be prepared to ask about it, and you should have an answer. And I agree with that completely. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on, Republican, Democrat, Independent. If you're running for president in 2020, you better fucking be full-throated supportive of legalizing marijuana. You got that? Because this is 2018 and we're already at 2 out of 3 people say do it. We're already at, a well into the 56% of Republican voters say legalize it. 73 to 78% of Democratic voters, and 48 to 62% of independent voters say legalize marijuana, man. What's the holdup? Furthermore, McGovern said, and I think that answer at a minimum should be that federal laws shouldn't frustrate what the states are doing. I agree, and I think that the best answer there is that we need to take marijuana out of the Controlled Substances Act and leave it up to the states to decide how to handle marijuana in terms of regulating it. Now, that was Bernie Sanders' position in 2015. And that's Cory Booker's position in 2017. And whoever signed on to his bill. And that bill made it to the House. And there was, I think, a few people signed on to it there. So you can look that up. It's called the Marijuana Justice Act. So that's where I stand on it. I think you should hold states accountable if they don't come up with sensible regulations for marijuana policy. And once again, here's your new Rules Committee Chairman, Jim McGovern, a Democrat. And that's all I got on this. I hope you learned something from this video, or maybe got some insight. It's kind of a long video to watch about some bullshit like this, but to me, this is one of the biggest things, reasons to celebrate the 2018 midterm elections. Besides, of course, I live in Michigan and we just legalized marijuana, so that's probably a big deal. But, this was a pretty big one. And like I said, I'm in kind of laid back, relaxing, coming down off of all this excitement and whatnot. And I'll be doing some more videos about whatever else happened in those elections, but I felt like this was like the most important thing that happened besides Michigan legalized. And that's all I got. So if you're new here, please subscribe and hit the like button if you found this information useful, and keep rallying with me. We'll do this.